Yo, hey guys, it is Simon the Giver 2010 with my new tutorial series. I just want to say thank you guys for 1K. That was an awesome surprise. But yeah, so I told you guys I would teach you how to do a basic run cycle and walk cycle, a front flip and back flip, and then using emitters to create particles. Today I'm going to show you how to create a basic walk cycle and run cycle. So a tutorial a while back, I was using FMR 4.0 and doing the cheap way of making a run cycle, and it doesn't look right, and it makes your character appear as if he is sliding, not taking a smooth step. So I use FMR 5.0. You can use 4.0. I have a whole bunch of different rig versions and stuff. But FMR 5.0 is fine. And you're just going to go to File, Open, find where you saved it, and double click on that. Once it pops up here, I'll show you how the startup version of Cinema 4D should look like and what all this means. So in here, right in this little section right here, it says Objects, and it will show the rig right here. And think of this more like a list of all the objects you have in this scene. Now attributes, this thing right here, if I click on a list, one of the objects we have in the Objects tab, if I click on our rig, it shows the attributes or things about it. So then here is our timeline, and this basically is showing us how many frames we have in the animation, and we can extend this, make it longer. I prefer it to stay at 90 frames for right now. But yeah, and materials right here are all the textures that are in the animation, and the FMR 5.0 textures are not showing up because they have hidden textures that are in a separate list. And these are the tools we'll be using to extrude a rig, and these are the moving tools. Now that we've got that over with, I'll show you how to do that, how to do a walk cycle first. So this is how I like to make a walk cycle. Now, you guys might have different ways, but I hate fancy feet. It's adding an extra step that you really don't need. But you're going to click on the FMR 5.0 rig. You're going to scroll down, and where it says right lower leg and left lower leg, it should say feet right here. What you're going to do is just click no feet on both of the legs instead of feet. And now there should be no bend, or no leg bend, so that you don't have to do this, just rotating. Now, I'm just going to tell you here, if you have not learned how to move objects in Cinema 4D, you're going to have to watch a different tutorial, because I'm going to show you how to animate, not how to do everything. So now that I have fancy feet off, we're going to push the body down a bit. About that's good. And now we're just going to get the body off in a starting position. So you're going to separate the legs so that one is behind and one is a little bit forwards. Now remember, this is a walk cycle, so you gotta have the starting position look a bit casual, I guess. Now you're going to bend the body forwards by the hips, or the waist, and then move the hips up so that you've got a kind of a curve on the body. Make sure you're not moving it sideways or this direction. Keep it going in only one direction and not tilting. But now that we have a back having like a slight bend to it, a bend going forwards, we're going to move the head so that it's facing down a bit. And now we're going to hold shift and click on both arms, the bottom part of the arms, and we're going to move the arms up. Then what we're going to do is just move the top part, the top control of the arms out a bit so they aren't touching the body. And now you can mess with the hips, choose a position that looks best for your scene. Now, what we're going to do is, like I said, get the arms, push one back and one forward. How it normally looks is the arm that is, the leg that is back, the arm will be forwards. So basically, if the left leg, or if the right leg is back further behind than the right leg, or than the left leg, then the right arm will be forwards. So it's basically the opposite direction of the leg. So now you're just going to push this arm back, this arm forward. Now what we're going to do is on the green axis of the rotation tool, we're going to tilt the arm that is going forwards. So it's pretty simple. Now we have our first pose. Now how I animate is I click on the automatic keyframing tool, and this is where the timeline comes in play. When you animate, these frames are how many movements you can make your character do or model. So I'm hoping you guys already know how to animate, but I'll explain most of it. So what we're going to do is, since we have automatic keyframing on, what a keyframe is, by the way, is you're getting from one pose to another, and then in between those poses, the character will move. If that explains it. So if I want the character to start right here, and then at 30 frames, I want him to go all the way over here. You notice how, even though those are two flat poses I just made, it pre-animates those frames in between the keyframes we made. So you notice I didn't animate every frame in between these, but the program does it itself. So that's how keyframes work in animate. That's how animation works in a nutshell. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a keyframe with this button on. Now make sure this button make sure this button is on, and there's like a blue thing around it, and then make sure there's a red ring around the perspective view. Now we're going to keyframe frame 0 by pressing the key button, and we're going to go to 15 frames and move it up a little, or not up, but forwards, and make sure it's going in a straight line. And you can either move it on the blue axis, or you can move it freely by clicking and holding on the mouse without this selected. So like, just make sure this is selected, and then click and hold on the mouse, and you can move it freely instead of using an axis. Now that we have that, we're going to go to the blue leg, which is the right leg, and we're going to keyframe that. Then we're going to go to 15 frames and move the leg forwards. And now we can push the body a bit down so there's a bend. And now here's what we've animated so far. Is that? Doesn't look that beautiful. So what we're going to do is, in between those frames, we're going to move the leg up. So he's kind of taking a first step. And now what we're going to do is, even when you're walking, your legs aren't completely straight. So move the waist a bit so that both legs are slightly bent. They don't both need to be perfectly bent, just slightly. And now we're going to go to the first frame, and we're going to move it so that it's not going up and down, it's going straight. That's good. Now, everybody's body, when that leg is pushing up, your body doesn't go straight. It actually moves up a bit so that this leg can push you up. So what we're going to do is just move in between 0 and 15 frames, which is about 8. I know there's no real even number, but, and then we're going to move the waist up. So now if we play it, the character is taking his first step. Now what we're going to do is, the arms are also never perfect. So we're going to keyframe both arms by clicking on the first arm, or the blue arm. Keyframe that, go to the second arm, and keyframe that. And now, at 15 frames, you're going to do the exact opposite position of arms. So since this arm is backwards, we're going to move this arm forwards. And remember what we did to the other arm by moving it on the green axis so that it bends a bit forwards. And now we're going to do the exact opposite to the blue arm, which is pushing it backwards. Now make sure that the arm that's moving backwards does not have a tilt anymore. So that is going completely straight and doesn't have any form of tilt besides going backwards. So now you notice both arms are kind of rotating. Let me fix that a bit. And now we have a basic step of the character moving forwards. Now, nobody just walks one step and then goes running. So what we're going to do is create another keyframe from 15 to 30. Now, each step needs to have an even amount of frames. The same amount of frames. So if one step takes 15 frames, then the next step will also take 15 frames. So we're going to move the waist, we're going to move the green square at the timeline from 15 to 30, and we're going to move the waist up a bit more again. Now remember, this is a walk, so we aren't going to move him super far like he's running. We're just going to move him to about right there. So now what we're going to do is watch it, and now we have one step, and then the body kind of floats. Floats forwards. So we're going to go to the red leg, or the left leg, and we're going to keyframe 15, even though nothing has happened yet. The reason why we're doing this is because when you're walking, your other leg is actually, it's slightly moving by the knee, but the bottom part is staying put so it can push the body forwards. So we don't want any animation in between 0 and 15. But now, on 15 to 30, we're going to make the leg move forwards, and the blue leg have no change in animation. So you notice it goes from one leg moving forwards to the other moving forwards. But remember, one leg is always in place. One leg is always not moving. In a run cycle, no, not in a run cycle, but just in a walk cycle, that's how it works. Now, at 23, we're going to move this leg up a bit, like the other leg. So now he takes 2 simple steps. So what we're doing on the second step is basically the exact same as the first step. We're just going in between those, moving the body up a bit. And yeah, now we don't want the waist to move up too high because that's unrealistic. You don't want the body to move up too high. Now, with the arms, there are 2 ways to animate the arms. Some people don't like to animate the arms every single time they take a step, and this is kind of complicated, and you gotta know what you're doing to copy and paste keyframes, and I'll show you both ways. So, what we did on the arms is, since they aren't moving, we can copy and paste the keyframes. Well, they're moving in place because they're attached to the body. The body is moving, so we can't copy and paste those keyframes. But we can copy and paste the arms. So, from 0 to 15, the arms are going forwards and backwards. Now, at the second step, to 30, we can copy and paste the 0 keyframe because they're going to end up being in the same position. So you're going to click on 0, the 0 keyframe, and you're going to hold Control and C on the keyboard if you have a Windows. And now, with keyframe 30 highlighted, press Control and B on your keyboard. Now make sure your mouse is inside the timeline section, otherwise it won't work. So now we have the arms copy and pasted so that we can keep doing that. Or, the other thing we could do is just reanimate the arm, which basically is doing this. We're just going to reanimate it. So, untilt this arm, push it back, push this arm forwards, tilt it. So there's not too much of a difference if you copy and paste or if you reanimate. It's really depending on what type of animator you are. I personally like copying and pasting because in my animations I usually end up making a lot of run cycles and just walking and stuff. So I just prefer to copy and paste. It's a lot faster. And some animations, now this is optional though. This is also a bit complicated. But what you're going to do is for the head, you're going to keyframe 0, 15, and 30. Now in between 0 and 15, which is about 8, you're going to move the head up a bit. And now you can copy and paste the number 8 keyframe and just paste it in between all the 2 keyframes we just made. So now the head is kind of tilting upwards as he takes a step. That's just adding a bit of detail. Some people like to do it. I don't know. Sometimes I do it, sometimes I don't. It's depending on how casual this guy wants to be. And now there are 2 ways to animate a run cycle. You can either do a run cycle from a walk cycle, like as after he does like a couple steps of walking, he starts running. Or you can make the run cycle be starting off the animation. Now I normally have a run cycle starting off the animation. So for people who have never animated a run cycle before, I'm not sure how good this tutorial is going to be for you, because I'm going to show the people who know how to animate really well. And so if you haven't animated in Cinema 4D, I'm not sure how useful this tutorial will be. But for no feet, we're going to make sure fancy feet is off again, and we're going to get in a starting pose. So what I've learned is that the more bent the knees are, help you in 2 ways. The first way is when you pull the waist down to make the legs have more bend, and then when you push the legs forwards like this, now make sure both legs also have a bend. You're first of all taking a bigger step by pushing the waist down, and you're also making your character appear as if he's going faster. The reason why is because, I don't know, for some reason our mind gets tricked when we see the knees being bent, because when you're walking, normally your legs are not as bent. So you usually want your knees to be bent a lot, and you also want this leg to be out pretty far. Now turn on automatic keyframing again, and I'm going to kind of speed up this tutorial, so we're going to get those first poses out there. So go ahead and try to replicate the first pose I'm creating right here. So this is the first pose that you should be making right now. Now this is how most animators have the first pose, but it is not how it should look. The first pose should have the hips being bent at an angle, the head looking straight forward, and then the arm that is sticking out to be bent and pushed in near the body. And then the other arm is out. And this is how a first pose should look in a run cycle. Now the arm is also going to be facing towards what you are running, so make sure that arm is also up. So now we have the first position of a run cycle. Now, a run cycle is a lot different from a walk cycle because of how large a step is. So what we're going to do again is keyframe 0 and go to 15 and make the leg move up about this far. Now, since we have automatic keyframing on, whenever we move an object, it will automatically put a keyframe. So now we're going to go to the other leg, and we're going to move it at 15. so that it's touching the ground. And that is forwards. Okay, awesome. Now we want is the other leg. So now we have our character taking his first step with this other leg, and it's already animated. Now, each step is a bit different, so like I said, you can't copy and paste. But once the leg is off the blue pedestal, which I'm calling the blue thing right here the pedestal. And once this leg is not touching the the right leg controller, what we're gonna do is go to the keyframe when this leg touches, which is 15, when the other leg touches the ground. And we're gonna move this leg up like this, so it's the exact opposite of the leg. Now, we notice we have the leg moving upwards. Now, you can edit with this, make it look a bit smoother. I usually put the keyframe so that there's about 5 frames in between those. So yeah, if I play that, looks pretty nice, but like the walk cycle, at about 8 frames in between 0 and 15, we're going to move the body up. Now that looks a lot better. It's a lot smoother, and there's a good step. Now what we're going to do is go to 15, and we're going to move the body to be the exact opposite. So basically, rotate the hip the other direction, move the head to look forwards, move this arm up here, move this arm back there. So remember, make these arm positions really good, because you're most likely going to end up copying and pasting these arm keyframes later. So now we have is the arms moving forwards. Looks pretty nice. Now what I'm going to do is move that arm a bit more forwards, and then like that. Okay, that looks really nice. We've just got a good first step. Now what we're going to do is go to 30 keyframes, and we're going to make them do another long step, and we're going to do the exact same as the first step. So if you don't mind, I'm just going to speed this up a bit. Okay, so I've just finished making the second step, and now, if you saw me earlier, I copy and pasted 0 frames, the 0 frame of the arms, the hips, and the head, and pasted it on the 30 frame because it's the exact same position if I reanimated it or not. So now that I have that done, it's your walk cycle or run cycle should look like this. When you start up Cinema 40, there should be another option under attributes that says layers. And if you click it, it should have these four little things right here. Now, what you're going to do is uncheck these 2 locks by clicking them. And now we can click on these freely, and we can mess with the characters like files and how the rig works. So, what we're going to do is go to File, Open, and I'm just going to pretend I want him to hold, I'll have him hold a shear, because that's the original one. Okay. So, now that we have our model right here, we're just going to drag him down, move him up. Okay, so since I want the shear in this hand, we're going to go ahead and move the shear and rotate him, the shear, until it looks like it's in the arm. Okay. that looks about right. Now we're just going to keyframe this like 5 times. Now, basically, why I'm doing this is that it keyframes all the positions, the rotation, the axis rotation, and the scale, because we want all those keyframes. Now we're going to click on the plus button, and then click on this. And some of these words are going to be white, and one of them is going to be orange. Keep pressing the plus button next to the words that are orange. And now eventually it'll stop when you get here. And now what you're going to do is open up the word that says left arm, and you're just going to keep opening that up. Now you're going to be, now you have access to 2 words that say tools, left hand, and left fingers. Now don't mess with those, but we're going to drag the shear into in between tools left hand and tools left finger. And now it should be here. Now we're going to keyframe a whole bunch again. And now it should be in the arm and moving with him. So now if I play it, the shear is in the hand with him. Which looks pretty cool, but the problem is, when I render it, the shear isn't there. And that's because all these models are preset to not appear, because we dragged it into here. So what we're going to do is click these 2 buttons next to the bigger button, and they should put 2 green buttons. Now, when we render, the shear is there, which is cool. And now, I just taught you how to import all that stuff.